Tonight, you'll hear about the most remarkable financial and image resurrection in pop culture history and get a rare look at what Michael Jackson left behind.
Michael Jackson's private garage has been opened. What was inside? Or should I say, who was inside? You've probably heard every rumor about Michael Jackson under the sun, right? But what if I told you that some of the most jaw-dropping truths were never in the tabloids? They were right here, collecting dust in this very room all along. Stick with me till the end, because once we open the doors to Michael Jackson's garage, there's no unseeing what's inside. Let's dive in. The day they opened Michael Jackson's mysterious garage. For nearly 15 years after the world lost Michael Jackson in 2009, one part of his iconic Neverland Ranch remained locked away from the world. A garage that held not just cars, but whispers of his personal world, frozen in time. Imagine that? An entire garage, untouched, sealed shut, and shrouded in mystery for more than a decade. Why did it take so long to open it? What secrets had been quietly sitting there, waiting to be seen? The story behind that garage isn't just about luxury vehicles or celebrity possessions. It's about the tangled web of legal puzzles, legacy management, and a desire to preserve a piece of history with the kind of care reserved for ancient treasures. What could Michael Jackson possibly hide in a garage for all these years? What they found will leave you speechless, so don't blink, and whatever you do, stay till the end. According to those close to the matter, the delay had a lot to do with legal complexities. When Michael passed, his estate didn't just inherit his wealth, it inherited a mountain of financial disputes, ongoing lawsuits, and the emotional responsibility of protecting his legacy. Every item he left behind suddenly carried not just sentimental value, but legal weight. So, the garage, filled with a unique assortment of cars and collectibles, had to remain sealed until everything else had been sorted. After all, how could anyone confidently move forward with opening something so personal when everything around it was still tied up in red tape? But the legal side wasn't the only reason that garage stayed shut. There was also the matter of preservation. Those in charge of the estate weren't just caretakers, they were stewards of a cultural legacy. They knew that if those cars were left to sit in uncontrolled conditions, they could deteriorate. So instead of rushing to make the garage public or auctioning off the contents, they prioritized maintaining the environment inside. They brought in climate control systems, allowed only a select few maintenance staff to enter from time to time, and treated the garage almost like a museum vault. Isn't it fascinating how even the air had to be monitored, as if the garage was holding something sacred? And maybe, in a way, it was. Part of the reason the garage remained sealed for so long had to do with its symbolic power. There was something magical, almost mythical, about not knowing what was inside. Fans speculated. Experts wondered. The mystery became part of the magic. Why ruin that too quickly? Why rush to expose something that, in its hidden state, was gaining emotional and cultural value by the day? The estate executors seemed to understand that the longer they waited, the more powerful the reveal would become. And they were right. When the day finally arrived in 2024 to open those heavy garage doors, it wasn't a red carpet event. There weren't blinding camera flashes or shouting reporters. Instead, there was a quiet, almost sacred gathering of key people who had been entrusted with Michael's legacy. Among them were the estate's executors, John Branca and John McClane, men who had carried the responsibility of preserving the King of Pop's story for years. Alongside them stood automotive historians and preservation experts, people who knew how to assess and appreciate what they were about to see. Even Prince Michael, Jackson's eldest son, was there, his eyes reportedly filled with both curiosity and emotion. Perhaps seeing parts of his father's private life he hadn't fully understood before. No media frenzy, no public spectacle. Just a quiet moment, documented privately by a small professional film crew with security standing watch around the perimeter. The estate had made a clear choice. This wasn't about creating a circus. It was about respecting the man, his legacy, and the things he loved in private. As the doors began to open, silence fell over the group. It wasn't the kind of silence you get when people are bored. It was the kind of silence that falls when people are holding their breath. The air inside the garage was noticeably still, almost like it had been sealed in with the cars themselves. One of the estate managers later described the experience as walking into a perfectly preserved memory, while another said it felt like Michael had just stepped out for a minute. And then came the reactions, gasps, quiet murmurs, a few stunned laughs, and even a tear or two. Everyone there had known Michael in different ways, some as a global icon, others as a friend or family member. But seeing his private collection up close revealed a new layer to his personality. Sure, there were luxury cars, sleek, polished, timeless, but there were also more whimsical items that painted a softer, more playful picture. One standout? A custom Peter Pan-themed golf cart, complete with fairy wings and childlike decorations. Was anyone really surprised? After all, Michael was known for his childlike wonder and imagination. But still, seeing it up close hit differently. The atmosphere inside the garage was hard to pin down. On one hand, there was solemn respect, a quiet acknowledgement that this was sacred ground, a space tied deeply to the memory of someone who shaped music, dance, and popular culture. On the other hand, there was a nerdy kind of excitement from the car experts who admired the craftsmanship and uniqueness of each vehicle. Meanwhile, Jackson's family seemed to drift somewhere between nostalgia and surprise, taking it all in with personal memories rushing back. The estate managers, for their part, looked at everything through a practical lens, cataloging, documenting, assessing next steps. But underneath all that, there was something else. A subtle, almost spiritual realization that this garage had captured a side of Michael Jackson most of the world never got to see. Wasn't that, in some ways, the most beautiful part of it all? That even after all the fame, the headlines, the controversy, and the myth-making, Michael still had private corners of his world that were untouched, places where he could simply enjoy his passions without an audience. And now, all these years later, that space was giving people a more rounded, more human view of him. Not just the king of pop, but a man who loved fast cars, playful designs, and keeping pieces of his imagination close to him. A look inside, the first things they saw. When the garage doors slowly creaked open, no one quite knew what to expect. After all, this was Michael Jackson's private garage. What kind of person stores ordinary things behind such mysterious walls? But as the dim lights flickered to life and began to spread across the space, the first things that came into view weren't just cars. They were statements. Not just any statements, but loud, bold, and deeply personal ones that spoke volumes about who Michael Jackson was beyond the music, the spotlight, and the moonwalk. 3 vehicles stood in the center like royalty on display, and people couldn't help but wonder, were these just luxury machines? Or were they windows into the soul of a legend? Let's start with the crown jewel, a 1999 Rolls-Royce Silver Seraph limousine, painted in a soft silver blue that shimmered under the garage lighting. But the real magic wasn't the paint job, it was the inside. According to those present, Stepping into that limo felt less like entering a car and more like walking into a golden chapel on wheels. And that wasn't an exaggeration. The interior had been designed by Jackson himself and was dripping with 24-karat gold accents, delicate crystal fixtures, and all the opulence one could imagine from someone who once lived in Neverland. Inspired by the Palace of Versailles, the cabin echoed the lavishness of French kings and queens. Every detail screamed luxury, but also said something more. That Jackson wasn't just about glamour. He was about imagination and creating his own world, one where dreams weren't just allowed, but expected. Beneath the bonnet, the limousine held a powerful 5.4-liter aluminum V12 engine with 322 horsepower. Even though it was a hefty car, it moved with the kind of quiet grace only a Rolls-Royce could promise. Back in 1999, Jackson was said to have paid over $200,000 for this rolling palace. It had been scheduled for auction in 2009 with an estimated value between $140,000 and $160,000. But due to some legal back and forth, the sale never happened. After his death, collectors and fans alike began to whisper that maybe the car couldn't be priced anymore. Could you really put a number on something that felt like a part of him? Many believed this car had crossed from the category of luxury vehicle into something else entirely. An artifact, a sacred piece of music history encased in chrome and leather. Then came the second car, one that didn't dazzle with gold or sparkle with history, quite like the limousine, but instead pulled at something deeper: nostalgia. This was the 1985 Mercedes-Benz 500 SEL, and from all accounts, it wasn't just another car in his fleet. It was the one he'd kept the longest. The car was Jackson's daily companion during a time when he was quietly driving himself back and forth between his home in Encino and his Los Angeles studio. That's about 40 miles round trip, 40 miles of thoughts, ideas, melodies, and perhaps quiet moments away from the world's gaze. Isn't it something to think that some of his greatest hits may have begun as ideas hummed inside that very car? Under the hood, this Mercedes boasted a 5-liter V8 engine, offering 302 horsepower through a 4-speed automatic transmission. The long wheelbase gave it a smooth, comfortable ride, and the interior featured all the hallmarks of mid-80s European luxury: automatic climate control, powered seats, custom sound system, and elegant burr walnut trim. But what made this car especially endearing was what happened after Jackson was done with it. Rather than keeping it tucked away, he gifted it to his aunt for her birthday. She loved it so much, she had a license plate made that read TKS MKL. Thank you, Michael. That's not just a gift, that's a bond. The car was eventually sold at a music memorabilia auction for $100,000. But honestly, for the people who knew the story behind it, the real value came from the memories it held. And then, the third car, unexpected and full of character. A classic 1954 Cadillac Fleetwood. Now, this wasn't just a nod to American automotive history. It was a cinematic treasure. This very car had been used in the Oscar-winning film Driving Miss Daisy, with none other than Morgan Freeman behind the wheel. Imagine that, Michael Jackson, a global pop icon, owned a car that was part of one of Hollywood's most iconic films. It was like two worlds colliding in one gleaming piece of metal and chrome. This Cadillac had a 331 cubic inch V8 engine pushing out 230 horsepower. Impressive for its time. It wasn't flashy, but it had that timeless elegance you only find in old Hollywood and polished Americana. It stood out from the rest of Jackson's collection. Why? Because it wasn't about speed or sparkle, it was about story. about history, about respect for craftsmanship and culture. When it was first listed for auction, experts estimated its value between $20,000 and $30,000. But other sources like Haggerty placed the possible worth anywhere from $9,180 all the way to $275,000, depending on condition and provenance. That's a massive range, but doesn't that say something about value itself? How much of it is in the material, and how much in the story? What they found inside that garage wasn't just a bunch of parked cars. It was a quietly spoken biography, written not in ink, but in leather, metal, and gold. And if you look closely enough, you'll realize these weren't just vehicles. They were symbols of Michael's need for freedom. So buckle up and stay with us till the end to find out more what these cars revealed about Michael Jackson. When people think of Michael Jackson, they often imagine the music, the moonwalk, the glove, and the larger-than-life persona that captivated the world for decades. But behind the bright stage lights and worldwide fame existed a man with deep layers, some of which were quietly revealed in the most unexpected place: his garage. Yes, his garage. That space, often overlooked in the lives of the rich and famous, became a treasure trove of insight into the king of pop's soul. As estate curators carefully combed through his automobile collection, what they found didn't just scream celebrity luxury, it told a deeply personal story. Could a person's choice of vehicles really say something about their inner world? In Jackson's case, it absolutely did. His garage wasn't just a place to park cars, it was a private museum of emotions, memories, and dreams, quietly curated by a man who spent his life in the spotlight yet yearned deeply for solitude, control, and magic. One of the most striking revelations was Michael's unshakable connection to childhood wonder. For a man who spent his early years working under the glare of studio lights, he never really had the chance to just be a kid. So maybe it makes perfect sense that in adulthood, he clung tightly to anything that felt like a piece of that lost innocence. His collection included a golf cart. Yes, a golf cart that looked like something straight out of a storybook. It wasn't just any cart either. It was designed with his image dressed as Peter Pan, complete with colorful Neverland Valley decals. To some, it might seem eccentric, even odd. But for Michael, this cart was more than a vehicle. It was a symbol of his identity. It allowed him to be Peter Pan in his own little world, moving from one amusement ride to another across the grounds of Neverland Ranch. Who else but Michael Jackson would create an entire fantasy world and then build a fleet of vehicles to match? So, what do these cars say about the man who owned them? Maybe they say he was a dreamer, one who never quite got over a childhood he didn't get to live. Maybe they say he was someone who longed for connection but feared the spotlight that came with it. Maybe they tell the story of a man who saw beauty in small things, who used vehicles not just to move from place to place, but to build a world where he could finally feel safe, seen, and understood. And maybe, just maybe, that's what we all want, in one form or another. Stick around, because next we're going to show you how that very garage, yes, the one he filled with dreams on wheels, became an unforgettable part of his legacy. How the garage became part of his legacy. When the doors to Michael Jackson's garage were finally opened and his expansive car collection came into the public eye, there was an instant whirlwind of curiosity, speculation, and, naturally, opportunity. What would become of these vehicles, some luxurious, some quirky, but all iconic? Would the estate sell them off, one by one, to wealthy collectors eager to own a slice of pop royalty? That might have seemed like the most obvious route to take. But as it turned out, the people managing Michael Jackson's legacy had something else in mind, something deeper, something that wasn't just about money. It wasn't about a quick buck or flashy headlines. It was about history, legacy, and more importantly, respect. The executors of Jackson's estate didn't jump at the chance to liquidate his automotive treasures, even though the financial strain at the time could have justified such a move. Jackson's estate, after all, was reportedly drowning in a staggering $500 million of debt following his passing. So then, why not cash in on the cars, like so many celebrity estates have done in the past? Well, the answer lies in a mix of emotional weight and strategic foresight. The vehicles weren't just expensive machines with glossy finishes and famous fingerprints. They were pieces of his life, chapters in a story that stretched far beyond the music and moonwalks. From limousines to custom tour buses, each car held a memory, a mood, a moment. According to those closest to the process, like Karen Langford, Jackson's longtime friend and the official archivist of the estate, the decision to hold on to the majority of the vehicles was deeply intentional. She reportedly emphasized that every item, including the cars, would be preserved until Michael's children, Prince, Paris, and Blanket, came of age and could decide what to do with their father's belongings. In other words, this wasn't just about business. It was about giving his children the chance to make the call when the time felt right for them. Isn't that what any parent would have wanted? With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.